Some islands are disappearing from erosion, some from rising seas, and at least one is preparing to survive as a nation even if its land does not. 7 places, 7 different mechanisms of loss, and one shared deadline that scientists say is no longer theoretical. In several of these communities, relocation has already begun, and the place ranked at number 7 has lost half its land within a single lifetime. Goramara Island, situated in the Sundarbans delta of West Bengal, India, is visibly yielding to the Bay of Bengal. Over the last 2 decades, this low-lying muddy outpost has contracted to just 4.5 square kilometers. Here, regional hydrologists measure a local sea level rise of 3 to 4 millimeters each year, a rate that accelerates the relentless tidal erosion carving away the shoreline. This physical retreat shapes daily survival. As high tides push brackish water into the interior, saltwater floods agricultural fields, contaminating the soil and destroying the rice crops that families rely on. With no coastal defenses to hold the water, residents are forced into a quiet, repetitive cycle of retreat. Farmers dismantle their thatched homes, salvage the timber, and rebuild further inland, only to face the same rising water a few years later. Local scientists projecting these geomorphic changes estimate that if the current rate of land loss continues, Goramara will completely disappear beneath the tides by 2035. In the far South Pacific, the inhabitants of Tegua, a small island in Vanuatu, chose a different path. Rather than waiting for the sea to force an emergency evacuation, the community began organizing a planned voluntary retreat in 2005. Local waters rise at 4 millimeters each year, and by 2024, nearly half of the island's low-lying land had been lost to the tides. This early initiative is widely cited as one of the earliest deliberate community relocations directly linked to climate change. Working closely with regional coordinators, village leaders carefully chose a new settlement site on higher ground, managing the difficult transfer of homes, gardens, and clean water systems. While the move secured physical safety, it came with a quiet, heavy cost, separating families from the ancestral coastlines that had shaped their daily lives and cultural traditions for many generations. 6,000 miles north, in the subarctic waters of the Chukchi Sea, a different physical process threatens the Inupiat village of Shishmaref. On this narrow barrier island, the crisis is driven by rising seas and thawing ground. Warmer temperatures melt the coastal permafrost, the frozen soil that historically bound the island's shores together. At the same time, sea ice forms later each winter, leaving the coast unprotected against autumn storm surges. Year by year, the waves carve away up to 10 feet of land. Since the 1970s, residents have voted multiple times to relocate their entire community to the Alaskan mainland. Yet, despite a decisive referendum in 2016, the estimated $200 million move remains stalled, delayed by interagency disputes and federal funding roadblocks. Along the coast of Louisiana, the narrow strip of land known as Isle de Jean-Charles has contracted from 22,000 acres to just 320. This fragile ridge is the ancestral home of the Biloxi Chitimacha Choctaw tribe. In 2016, the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development allocated $48 million to relocate the community, establishing the first federal climate relocation grant in national history. The resettlement site lies 40 miles inland on a former sugarcane farm in Terrebonne Parish. Yet, for tribal elders, this funded retreat is emotionally incomplete. While the program builds modern houses on safe ground, it cannot transplant the ancestral graves, the sacred oak trees, or the family connections to the bayou. Physical safety lies inland, but identity remains tied to the sinking marsh. Farther west in the Pacific, the low-lying atolls of the Carteret Islands in Papua New Guinea present a quite systemic collapse. Here, the ocean does not need to entirely submerge the land to make life impossible. Rising tides push saltwater directly into the shallow freshwater lands, poisoning the soil and destroying the staple taro crops that sustained the island's 3,000 residents. By 2009, with traditional farming failing, the first families began a slow evacuation to the nearby island of Bougainville. While news reports often label these families climate refugees, international law offers no such classification, because the 1951 Refugee Convention requires a well-founded fear of human persecution. Those fleeing environmental loss have no recognized status, leaving their ongoing displacement outside of formal international protection and dependent on fragile, underfunded local resettlement programs. Kiribati's territory spans 33 coral atolls scattered across the Central Pacific, home to roughly 110,000 people. Here, the challenge of sea level rise is not a local crisis of village relocation, but a question of national survival. With most of the land rising less than 3 meters above the ocean, high tides are a relentless pressure on the young republic. A 2024 NASA analysis projects a dramatic shift in daily life. Areas that currently experience fewer than 5 high tide flood days per year will see around 65 annual flood days by the 2050s, regardless of future emissions pathways. Facing this timeline, the government is planning for a future beyond its physical borders. In 2014, Kiribati purchased 20 square kilometers of forested land on the Fijian island of Vanuatu for $8.77 million, originally an estate owned by the Church of England. This territory offers a potential refuge and agricultural base. The acquisition is a deliberate attempt to preserve a population's continuity, raising a challenging question: what survives when the problem is no longer moving a village, but preserving the identity of an entire nation? Tuvalu consists of 9 low-lying atolls and reef islands scattered across the Pacific, where the average elevation is just 2 meters above the water. At its highest natural point, the land rises only 5 meters. In March 2015, this vulnerability became reality. Cyclone Pam generated massive waves that breached protective reefs, displacing 45% of the population. The storm inflicted $10 million in direct damage, wiping out more than 1/3 of the nation's gross domestic product in a single event. The physical pressure continues to mount. NASA's 2024 sea level change analysis confirms that Tuvalu will experience at least 15 centimeters of sea level rise over the next 30 years, an unavoidable change that will occur regardless of future emissions pathways. Facing this timeline, Tuvalu is pioneering an unprecedented definition of survival. Rather than focusing solely on physical relocation, the government is moving its entire nationhood to the cloud. In 2023, Minister Simon Kofe announced a plan to build a complete digital twin of the country, starting with the atoll of Teafwaliku. This virtual replica will map every reef, road, and historical document, creating a living cultural archive for citizens scattered across the globe. To secure this digital legacy, Tuvalu amended its constitution in September 2023 to enshrine its statehood in perpetuity. Under international law, a country has always required physical territory to exist. Tuvalu's amendment challenges this legal framework, declaring that its sovereignty, maritime boundaries, and citizenship will remain valid even if the physical islands are entirely reclaimed by the sea. It transforms the question of land loss into a story of permanent cultural survival. As these communities adapt to a changing planet, understanding their stories helps us prepare for our shared global future. Subscribe to join us as we continue to explore the shifting geography of our world. As these shorelines recede, we are forced to redefine what it means to belong to a place. This is not just a geographic crisis, but a quiet redrawing of our shared human map. To follow these stories and explore our changing world, please subscribe.